Now let's take a look at subtracting fractions. We'll focus on fractions with like and unlike denominators. Here are the main topics we're going to address. We'll address subtracting proper fractions, subtracting improper fractions, subtracting mixed numbers, and subtracting fractions from integers. Now let's look at subtracting proper fractions. The first thing we're going to do is identify the least common denominator. We're going to create equivalent fractions where necessary, and we're going to subtract the numerators from numerators of the fractions and simplify the fractions. To get started, we will address fractions with like denominators. So if I have something that looks like this, if I have 3 over 4 minus 1 over 4, what we're saying here is least common denominator, so we have the same denominator, so we can safely assume that that's what we're going to have here, and then we will subtract the numerators, so 3 minus 1, so that's going to give us 2 over 4, and then we simplify. We can divide numerator and denominator by 2, and that gives us 1 over 2. Let's look at one more example. 8 over 27 minus 2 over 27. First step is make sure the least common denominators are the same, so because they are, we can just subtract the numerators from one another. So 8 minus 2. So this is going to give us 6 over 27. And we'll have to see if we can simplify this. So if we simplify this, we divide it by 3. We divide this by 3. So that gives us 2 over 9. Now, let's address proper fractions with unlike denominators. If I have 5 over 6 minus 1 over 2. So we can see here that we have unlike denominators. So what we're going to do is find a common denominator, the least common denominator for 6 and 2. So because 6 is a multiple of 2, we can safely say that 6 will be our least common denominator. So now what we're going to do is we're going to find out what we multiply 2 by to get to 6, which is just simply 6 divided by 2. So in this case, we're going to multiply numerator and denominator by 3. So that's going to give us 5 over 6 minus 3 over 6. So now that we have a common denominator, we can just subtract the numerators. So this is going to give us 2 over 6, even numbers, so we can safely divide by 2, which ends us with 1 over 3. One more example. Let's look at 13 over 14 minus 3 over 7. So we're going to look at the denominators first. We examine them, we see that they're different, and the first thing we do is identify the least common denominator. 14 is a multiple of 7, so 14 can be our least common denominator. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply, because 7 multiplied by 2 would make us have a common denominator. What we end up having is 13 over 14 minus 3 times 2 over 7 times 2. So this is going to give us 13 over 14 minus 6 over 14. So 13 minus 6, well, let's start with this. We have a least common denominator 14, so we can subtract 13. We can subtract 6 from 13. This gives us 7 over 14, and we can simplify this by dividing numerator and denominator by 7. This gives us 1 over 2. Now, let's move on to improper fractions. Now, let's take a look at subtracting improper fractions. So, here's an improper fraction. We will start with improper fractions with like denominators. So, let's do this. 23 over 7 minus 4 over 7. So let's do that first. What we're going to do is identify the least common denominator. Then we will create equivalent fractions where necessary, subtract the numerators, and then convert to a mixed number and then simplify the fraction. You can simplify the fraction before you convert. It's really optional at that point. So in this case, we have the same denominator, so we can safely subtract the numerators. So 23 minus 4, that should give you 19 over 7. So this, we don't have any common factors for 19 and 7. So what we're going to do is create our mixed fraction or a mixed number. So 19 divided by 7, we have 2. And then you have a remainder of 5, and then 7 is your divisor. So that's what you do here. What if we had 33 over 13 minus 14 over 13? So we have the same denominator, so we can easily subtract the numerators. 33 minus 14. So that's going to give us 19 over 13. So when we divide, now that we're here, this is the simplest or lowest form that it can have, the simplest form that it can take because it has no common factors. So what we're going to do now is convert to a mixed number. So 19 divided by 13, we can have 13 and 19 only one time with a remainder of 6. Now let's take a look at improper fractions where the denominators are unlike denominators. We can start with 13 over 8 minus 5 over 3. So we're going to first identify the least common denominator for this. So here's a simple way to do it. We look at 8. 8 is 2 to the third power, and then 3, that's 3 to the first power. And so your least common denominator is going to be, we're going to have 2 and 3, and we're going to pick the greatest exponents. So that is 3 and 1. So this is going to be 8 times 3, which is 24. So now we're going to rewrite these improper fractions with the new least common denominator. So for 8, we need to multiply by 3 to get to 24. So we're going to multiply 13 by 3, 8 by 3, minus, and then for 3, which is right here, we need to multiply by 8 so that we can get to 24. So this is going to give us 3 by 8 and then 5 by 8. So this is going to give us 39 over 24 minus 40 over 24. So what we have here is least common denominator the same. So we got 24 here, Now we have 39 minus 40, which is going to give us -1. Okay, let's try one more. 36 over 5 minus 8 over 7. So here we're going to identify the least common denominator. So one trick to have in your back pocket is if you have denominators that are prime numbers, your least common denominator will just be multiplying them together. So in this case we have 35, 5 times 7. So we're now going to convert these two fractions to equivalent fractions with a denominator of 35. In this case here, we have 5 times 7, and we have 36 times 7. And for 7, we have 7 times 5, and then we have 8 times 5. So this is going to give us 36 times 7. That should give you 2, 5, 2 over 35 minus 440 over 35. So now 252 or 252 minus 40, that should give you 212 divided by 35. So if we divide 212 by 35, so 35 by 6, that gives you 210. So this is going to give you 6. 2 is your remainder over 35. Next, we will look at subtracting mixed numbers. As our usual practice, we will start off with mixed numbers with the same lists, with the same denominators, and then we'll follow the process. So let's look at 9 5/7 minus 3 4/7. So because they are like denominators, we don't need to worry about least common denominator or creating equivalent fraction. So what we're going to do first is subtract the integers. So if we subtract the integers, we get 9 minus 3. It's going to give us a 6. Now we will subtract the numerators because we have a common denominator. So that is going to give us 5 minus 4, which now gives us 6 1 over 7. Now I'm going to try one where it's not as direct. Let's look at 3 1 over 5 minus 1 3 over 5. So what we're going to do here is we're going to subtract the integers. So we got 2 right here, and then we have the same least common denominator, which is 5, and then we're going to have 1 minus 3. Now here's an important thing to note. 1 minus 3, because we're dealing with fractions, you can't have a whole number here and a negative number here. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to borrow from the whole number. So we're going to take 1 from it, and that becomes 1 right here. And that 1 that we borrow represents 5 over 5. So what we're going to now do with this is we're going to say 1. Remember that the 1 that we just borrowed is 5 over 5. So we're going to have 5 plus 1 minus 3 over 5. So can you see that this 5 and this 5 here represents the one that we borrowed? Then we have this one, same as what we have up here. And then we have this 3, same as what we have up here. So this is going to give us 5 plus 1. So that gives us 6 minus 3 over 5, which is 1, 3 over 5. Now we're going to look at mixed numbers that do not have like denominators. So we're going to do this here. 7, 3 over 8 minus 2, 1 over 4. So first step is to identify a least common denominator. And like we say, because 4, or rather 8 is a multiple of 4, so our least common denominator will just be 8. And then we're going to rewrite this fraction right here, 1 over 4, to look exactly like this with a denominator of 8. So we keep going. So this is going to give us 7, 3 over 8 minus 2, 1 over 4. So we multiply this by 2 to get to 8, multiply this by 2 to get to 2. So we have 7, 3 over 8 minus 2, 2 over 8. So now we have created the equivalent fraction, and first step is we're going to subtract the integers. That gives us 5. Now we have a common denominator of 8, and so we have 3 minus 2. This is going to give us 5 and 1/8. What about 4, 2 over 7 minus 2, 3 over 5? Now 7 and 5, we can just simply multiply them together to get our new least common denominator. So that's 35. So what we're going to end up doing is for 7 we multiply by 5, for 5 we multiply by 7. So we have 2 times 5 over 7 times 5 minus 2, 3 times 7 over 5 times 7. So this is going to give us 4 10 over 35 minus 2 21 over 35. So the next step here is to subtract the integers. So 4 minus 2, that gives us 2. We now have a common denominator of 35. So now we can subtract the numerators. 10 minus 21. So this is going to give us 10 minus 21 is negative 11. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to borrow 1 from here, from 2. That's going to give us 1. And the 1 that we have borrowed is 35 over 35. So we're going to add 35 plus 10 minus 21 over 35. So this right here represents the 1. This 35 and 35 up here represents the 1 that we borrowed. So this is going to give us 35 plus 10. That's going to give you 46 minus 21. That's 25 over 35. So the next thing we're going to do is try to simplify 25 over 35. They have a common factor of 5. So this is going to give us 5 over 7. Now let's try one more example on this, and then we can move over to subtracting fractions from integers. So we're going to try one that's, I think, we're going to make this a bit more challenging. So we're going to try something like this. 8 3 over 17 minus 5 4 over 9. So this is a prime number right here. 17 is a prime number. So we can see we have unlike denominators. So our first goal is to get the lowest common denominator, and then when we get that, we'll create the equivalent fractions. So 17 and 9, for least common denominator, we can just multiply them together because this is a prime number. So we multiply them together. It should give you 17 times 9, 3, take the 6 up here, and then 15. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to multiply 17 by 9 on this side and then 9 by 17 on this side. So what we have here is 17 times 9, 3 times 9, minus 5, 9 times 17, 4 times 17. So we have 8, 3 times 9 is 27 over 153, minus 5, 4 times 17 is 68, then we have 153. So the next step is that we are going to subtract the integers from one another. So 8 minus 5, that's going to give us 3. And then we have a common denominator of 153. And now we can subtract the numerators. So we have 27 minus 68. Because 27 minus 68 will give us a negative number, what we're going to do next is we're going to borrow from 3. So cross that out, and it becomes 2. And the number we borrowed is the one that we borrowed represents 153 over 153. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to add 153 plus 27 minus 68 over 153. So we end up with 2. 153 plus 27, that should give us 180 minus 68, 112 over 153. Now, this cannot be further simplified, so this is our answer. Finally, we'll take a look at subtracting fractions from integers. I'm going to first look at a proper fraction from an integer, and then I'll look at a mixed number from an integer. So let's get started with the proper fraction from an integer. If you had something like 2 minus 4 over 7. So we want to rewrite the integer as an improper fraction with the same denominator as the fraction. So look at what that means here is the denominator here is 7. So here's how we're going to do that. We're going to say 2 times 7 over 7 minus 4 over 7. So this is going to give us 14 over 7. You can see that if you divide 14 by 7, you get a 2. Minus 4 over 7. Now, because we have the same common denominator, which is 7, we can just say 14 minus 4, which is going to give us 10 over 7. Now, this is simplified. 10 divided by 7, we can get 7 in 10 only one time with a remainder of 3, and then we keep our denominator. Now let's try one more of this type. 3 minus 1 over 5. So if you follow the steps, the first thing we're going to do is rewrite 3 such that it shares the same denominator as the fraction. So what we're going to do is we have 3 times 5 over 5 minus 1 over 5. So this is going to give us 15 over 5 minus 1 over 5. Now we have a common denominator of 5, and then we can just subtract the numerators. So this is going to give us 14 over 5, which when we divide 14 divided by 5, we have 2 times with a remainder of 4. Okay, next we will look at subtracting mixed numbers from integers. So here's an example we're going to try. 7 minus 4 3 over 8. So here's a tricky one that we're going to actually do. So we have a mixed number here, so that means that you also have an integer attached to that fraction. So here's a slight change in what we're going to do. We're going to subtract 1 from the 7, so we make it 6, and we have plus 1 minus 4 3 over 8. Now we're going to rewrite this 1 here to look exactly like a fraction. So this is going to be 6, 1 times 8 over 8 minus 4, 3 over 8. So this is going to give us 6, then 8 over 8 minus 4, 3 over 8. So now we're going to apply the mixed numbers method here. So we have 6 minus 4 gives us 2. Then we have a common denominator of 8. 8 minus 3, which gives us 5 over 8. Let's take a stab at one more example of this type. Let's go with 4 minus 2, 1 over 3. So our step here is we're going to rewrite this the integer to look like a mixed number. So what we're going to do is we're going to subtract 1 from that 4 and make it 3 plus 1 minus 2, 1 over 3. And now we're going to rewrite that 1 with a denominator of 3. So that's going to be 3. Then we're going to multiply 1 by 3. So because it's a denominator of 3, you can just multiply numerator by 3 and denominator by 3. Minus 2, 1 over 3. So this is going to give us, we subtract the integers, that gives us 1. Then 3, we have a denominator of 3, a common denominator of 3. And then we can subtract the numerators, 3 minus 1. This is going to give us 1. 3 minus 1 is 2 over 3. So those are the main types of subtractions we can have when we're dealing with fractions.